Donald Trump goes on Rogan to explain why he should be the choice of 38 million viewers on the Rogan podcast. We're going to go over some of the things that were talked about in that particular podcast, what it has done for the reach, Harris's reaction to this, who, by the way, spoiler alert, is not going on Rogan, and what happens from there in other election news. Still in the Trump camp, Donald Trump's Madison Square Garden rally attracts voters in a very blue enclave for blocks and miles around, but may have been offset by an off-color joke by one of the comedians who I had never even heard of before any of this at the middle of the program. We're going to talk about that, what the people are saying, and the Nazi influence that is going on with that as well, or at least the perceived one that people talk about. In more election news, a ballot drop box was set on fire in Washington. A suspect vehicle is found, and a photo was released of a, quote, suspect with the proclamation that he was conservative by all the paid left-wing shills over on X. Those posts have all been deleted for reasons that we all fucking know at this point. So we're going to go over that and talk about the fact that there might not be any sort of political motivation to this with a big hoax that went on to that. And finally, in case you didn't need any other October surprises coming on, a series of strikes on Tehran, the capital of Iran, rocked the night as Israel took a retaliatory blow for the strikes that were put on Israel just a couple weeks ago. It is going to be all of this and more over here on Contemporary. So, put on your tinfoil hats. Make sure that you praise the name of Lee Harvey Oswald and the grassy knoll. And maybe, just maybe, you get your alien urine and make sure that your wife is impregnated also by aliens while you are gone. And we're leaving together, but still it's farewell, and maybe we'll come back to Earth, who can tell? I guess there's no one to blame. We're leaving ground. Will things ever be the same again? It's the final countdown. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Oswald, my mower, grassy knoll. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, with, of course, my Dale Gribble costume on for the night. And I'll be doing this on Thursday when I go trick-or-treating as well. Hopefully, the reference isn't that dated, where people actually know what's going on here. For those of you listening on the audio platform, you are missing out, of course. I went full out, mirrored sunglasses, red Mac hat. I've got the brown shirt, so yes, we are sporting the full Dale Gribble, even though I know that there's one person in my chat who is too young to appreciate the look of Dale Gribble or the character because, well, the show went off air in the 90s, and that reboot that we've been promised over and over again has not come back yet. I know it's coming, and I know we have speculation on what's going to have happened to Bobby, but that's about all that we have, and of course, I can't sit here dressed as Gribble without giving at least a bit of memoriam to the legendary Johnny Hardwick, who we did lose this past year. That's part of the reason that I chose to dress up as Gribble this year. Now, part of it's because I'm anti-government, conspiracy-minded sometimes, and occasionally I enjoy the once or twice cigarette. I can't do it for as often as I used to anymore because, well, I beat the crap out of my lungs when I was in my 20s, but I do still enjoy the occasional one here and there, so I figure it would be fitting and a good send-off to Mr. Hardwick as well. Thank you for the memories. Johnny Hardwick, of course, is the voice actor who voiced Dale Gribble throughout the entirety of the series and into the first 2 seasons of the upcoming reboot. That's right, they got 2 seasons recorded before Hardwick passed away. So I'm kind of looking forward to see that, and I do hope, I know I'm kind of in the minority with the decision to revoice him, but I don't think that a 3rd season of the King of the Hill reboot would be the same without Gribble. And I know I actually am one of the few that don't have a good impression of Gribble. I do a better one of Hank, but I know that there are a lot of people out there who can do a passable, if not perfect, Gribble. They might not have the same personality as Hardwick, unfortunately, but I don't want to see that character go away if they continue with the reboot. So, anyway, we do have a ton to go over here. That's why I started just a little bit late, is because there is so much here. I had 75 articles when I started out. I've narrowed it down to 63. But 75 was just where we were starting off with this. So, we're going to get through it all, getting it all organized down, the video clips listened to, and everything else. What took the longest. I didn't think I had that much, just kind of looking in at what we had over in the Discord server, but going down some of the rabbit holes of some of the stuff that happened this week was intense. And yes, it is the final countdown. That's right, Election Day is coming. It will be here before you know it, and the next thing you know, we'll be going. I've got 2 viewers waiting here. Did I not go live on Rumble? I am not on Rumble. Let's get on there. Alright, let's sending again. I know that when I got started off, I didn't have the stuff in, which I had to shut Rumble down so I could go back and do it. But yeah, I mean, the people who are joining in Rumble and seeing at the beginning of the video are probably going to be confused as shit coming off to this. But luckily, I can go back and upload the replay over to Rumble. And if you like what you see before we get started, first, make sure you go check out great programming such as the Daily Ignoramus and Overruled with KTZed. They're great programs. They're great friends of the show. I got to talk to both of them about what to do with Ed Talk coming up after election month. By the way, I will not be doing any Ed Talk through the entirety of November. And that is based on the fact that so much of the news coverage is going to be on riots going one direction or the other, based on the results of the election, the court challenges, and everything else. It's going to be a big burden to do this. I am going to look to see if I can get some great guests, including the wonderful Jessica Green, back for the beginning of December as we go into Christmas. I've got a few other people that I want to have some good conversations with because they rock, but that'll be coming up here, but do go check out the Daily Ignoramus and Overruled with KTZed. My episode with Cat Pants 13 has dropped on Spotify, so you guys can go and listen to that. And coming up this week, there will be a episode with the wonderful Anna Baltus, talking about his latest book, his political ideology, and the political system that he came up with. That's going to be coming up here. A lot of content coming out of this channel. And yes, as of right now, I am still planning on doing a late night live stream after Contemporary for election results as they roll in right on this channel. So, without further ado, we'll check the live chat and then we're going to get into the news for the day. So, let's have a look here. Just look at what we got going on here. The Mogwai is first today. Palm is second. Can't win them all, she says. Vong is here. No, there will be not any Puerto Rico jokes to warm the crowd. Yes, there will be. Vong says, 2 ads in a row, and the second one featured a lesbo couple and a gay couple. The Lobo Homo must be really scared. I have not put the World Globo Homo emote in the Twitch side, partially because I think it'll get me banned from Twitch, and partially because Well, if I'm going to put something that spicy in there, you're going to have to pay $25 a month for it. And, well, I don't know who's going to do that. I'll be happy if people do it. Don't get me wrong. I'll be really happy if people give me $25 a month for that. Why does it say offline? I don't know. I am online, though. Bong says, I'm doing well, thanks. I'm only here for a bit because I'm going to swing dance tonight. It's costume dance, too, since All Hallow Tide is fast approaching. Mog says, I was invited to a Halloween party the other day. I told them I was going to come as a Biden cognitive thought. By the way, I'm not going. Nice. Grant says, you got the orange man on? Yep. The NPC Pumpkin has joined me again. This is the third year in a row for the NPC Pumpkin. Mog says, with Israel and Iran going at it, maybe the final countdown is the best choice of lyrics. Nice. Bong says, I'm also going to the dance in costume. Should try to guess what I'm going as. I'm going to be the scariest thing imaginable to the liberal-minded crowd at this place. I have no idea. Luna C is here. They can just drop the bridge on the character. Nice. Mog says, I'm taking Wednesday off next week. So am I. Clean-shaven J. Edgar is scaring the Mogwai. Well, you can't be Dale Gribble with a beard. I debated that and I contemplated that for a long time, deciding whether or not to go with that, but I did indeed choose to go with the beard-free. Plus, it'll give it a chance to grow back nice and soft. I used to do that like every 6 months. I'd just shave down to clean skin every 6 months. And it would come back extra soft. It usually took about a week and a half to come back to its former glory, but it still came back extra soft. All right. We have done enough filibustering with the live chat, but I will keep up with live chat as we go. Let's look in at the news of the week. We're going to start with the polls with a twist. Now, this past weekend, when I looked at the polls, we were showing Trump plus 0.1, which breaks every stereotype of what was happening at this time in 2016 and 2020. That is, of course, on the aggregate. With an Atlas Intel poll coming in just today with 3,032 likely voters, which is my second least favorite kind of poll that they put on RCP. That puts the race into a plus 0.4 for Trump on the aggregate, which is, I mean, we're in win the popular vote territory at this point. I don't know if it's going to happen. I'm going to be full out, and I've been analyzing this. I've been analyzing this upcoming election since 2022. And all the twists and turns and putting it against statistics from previous elections and previous midterms and everything else that goes along with this. Guys, I can't even begin to tell you what's going to happen on Tuesday. And in the following 4 weeks. And in the following January. I don't know where we're going. It kind of excites me and it kind of frightens me, and I'm not going to lie about either of those things. It's going to get interesting. That much I can tell you. It's going to get intense and possibly insane. So, at this point in the election cycle in 2020, Mr. Biden, come on, man, was leading by 7.4 in the aggregate. At this point in October 29th, 2016, Hillary, who famously lost in that election, was leading by 4.6 points on the aggregate. Let's take a look down our battlegrounds. We have Arizona with the aggregate at plus 2.2. I still think that it's going to go Harris for Arizona. Maricopa County does still exist. You have to keep in mind. I think that one is going to go. Nevada is plus 0.5% on the polling. Nevada could go either way to me. I could see that one going either direction. I think it's going to go Trump this time through, but there is enough food service and entertainment work in Las Vegas that I think it could go the other direction. I think it could still go Harris. Wisconsin is going to go Harris. That much I can tell you right off the bat. It doesn't matter that Trump is leading by 0.6, and Harris hasn't had a leading poll in this state since the beginning of October. The ballot drop box thing, I think, is going to push that over into Harris's favor. Madison and the ballot drop box thing, I think, is going to make this a Harris state. Michigan is showing Harris plus 0.5. I think Michigan goes Trump. I think that there's been enough alienation in the Muslim community. I think that Michigan does go Trump. Not because the Islamic community goes out and votes for Trump. I think they just stay home. I do. I really think that they're going to stay home this time through. Pennsylvania, I do think, is Trump country at this point. I think that that one is going to go. There's a slight chance that that could go the other direction or come out into... I think Pennsylvania has a possibility of coming out into a dead, possibly one vote tie, honestly. Or a dead even heat. A statistical impossibility, I know. North Carolina is Trump plus 1.0. North Carolina is going to go Trump. That one I say is going to be a thing. In Georgia, I think goes Trump. Georgia is plus 2.4 in the aggregate. Georgia has been partially defortified. And I don't think Atlanta produces enough votes to overcome. So there's your swing state polling. And yeah, it's... I mean, we can go pull up the multi-candidate polls, but I don't think it's going to do anything at this point. No, I don't want the battlegrounds. That's in a 5-way race. I don't want that. Let's bring up the regular aggregate. So, yeah, that's where we're sitting at right now. The betting odds are highly in favor of Trump. I still will come back out and say that this is anybody's game. This is anybody's to lose right now. And we still have a lot of time left in this election. Let's see. Vong says, I can't look like an adult without a beard. Give it a couple weeks. Ed with a beard looks 55 and Ed without looks 20. Yeah, I know, that's awesome. Bog says, Nevada's going Harris because of state Supreme Court ruling yesterday. I still don't think that's going to do it. I think that's an either or, specifically. Mog says, I hear Edgar without a beard got an invite to the next P. Diddy party. Weird. And Vong is out of here. So we are with that. Alright, let's look at the Dow. This mouse cursor and these sunglasses are going to drive me nuts, by the way. But it's festive. On the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the Dow is sitting today at 42,233.05, still sitting near a record high, but losing 154.52 points today, or about a third of a percentage point on the day, which, I mean, when we start getting into these higher numbers, a third of a percentage point is a lot more points sitting on the Dow, so that's something to keep in mind as we go. But it looks like it dropped off in the beginning. It came back and did a big rally before just faltering out through the rest of the day. Going back to the last 5 business days, we've had a pretty steady decline throughout that point. I mean, going back out on the month, there was a big peak in the middle of the month, and it's just been faltering and petering out since then. And uncertainty is the enemy of the markets. So that's going to be something that we come back out, watch and see, and check out where it goes. But there's your Dow for the week. Let's look a little bit over here at IBD and what they say is going on with the markets. And then we're going to talk Rogan. From IBD, Dow futures rise, Google, Reddit, AMD are big earnings movers. These titans are up next. From Ed Carson, Dow futures rose slightly after hours, along with the S&P and the Nasdaq futures, with Google parent Alphabet rising more than 4% late on earnings, moving many other techs. AMD, Visa, and Reddit were also among the deluge of late-night earnings posts. The Nasdaq hit a freight fresh high on Tuesday, as the market rally showed mixed action. Treasury yields continue to climb. Bitcoin jumped above 72,000 on hopes for a Trump election victory. There were a lot of big earnings losers, with a few flashing buy signals. Tesla fell slightly, dropping a little further below its recent breakout entry. That's partially due to the fact of people wanting to come back and boycott Tesla cars, because Elon man bad. Dow futures rose 0.15% versus fair value, with the Visa offering a slight lift. The S&P climbed 0.2%. Visa offering a slight lift, by the way, in an election year with an economy this way is bad news coming into election territory, by the way, because it is saying that people are relying more on their credit cards for everyday purchases. Rather than paying cash for them or paying debit card. They're getting that sweet, sweet interest boost. My cousin joined on Instagram for the Dale Gribble costume. I see that. I see you over there, Shane. The S&P futures climbed 0.2%, and the Nasdaq advanced 0.3%. Google stock and AMD are S&P 500 and Nasdaq giants. In addition to overnight earnings, Wave investors will also get their first look at third quarter GDP before Wednesday's open. The October jobs report is due Friday morning. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So, that is what we were sitting at as far as earnings, as far as the markets go. And remember, anything that's listed here, brought up here, is not official financial advice. Always check with your official financial advisor on what is best for you and your portfolio. Let's talk Rogan from the Beanie Boy himself, who is expecting, by the way, I just found out. So, mazel tov to you. I still hate you. I still hate your program. But mazel tov to raising a family, because that is base as fuck. Tim Pool at Timcast. My God! Trump and Joe Rogan. Let's go! Let's listen to the video.
Hello, world.
Hello, world.
We just wrapped up a great podcast.
We had a good time. I think you'll find it very interesting and enjoy it.
Hello, world.
It happened. One of the most downloaded podcasts in history, possibly at this point. They were at 38 million downloads within the first day. I was one of them. I listened to it. 3 hours of conversation between Rogan and Trump. Now, I'm going to tell you, I was not intent to vote Trump when Biden was still in the race. I could see the polls were going and Trump was leading by enough that I could say, you know what, I could probably stay at home. Biden's an idiot. If he does happen to win, it's not going to be the end of the world. They'll probably come back out and throw Harris out into it at the last minute, and she'll just come back out, bomb and tank. And I did weigh onto the option of the fact that he was going to be the placeholder for Harris to get her in without having a vote on the second term. I still, by the way, question whether or not it was the intent to have her be the candidate this entire time, bypassing any sort of primary by, number one, telling anybody who voted in the Democratic primary that they were a Russian asset or Trump apologist, or a Nazi if they voted for either Dean Phillips or Marianne Williamson. So we had that one going on with that. But also to go back and completely bypass the primary process to get her in. But I thought they were going to wait until the second term. I really did. But again, I didn't see a lot of issue with that either. I thought Biden's pride would keep him in until at least at the end. And then, of course, Harris's terrible campaigning would just absolutely destroy any semblance of a chance that she has in an election. And I think that's what's happening now. But again, I'm not going to try to make a prediction on what's going to happen next Tuesday. I'm not even going to attempt to make a prediction on that. It's going to be absolutely wild. But the day that she came in, I said, you know what? They bypassed the primary. They did a coup d'etat in the Democratic Party, and she is an absolutely corrupted prosecutor. I'm going to vote against her, which is something I promised myself I would never do again. I'm going to vote against Harris. But I'm still going to hate myself for voting Trump. Now, I sat down and listened to these 3 hours, and while the financial aspect of things still weighs heavily on my mind, and I'm going to be completely honest about that, it still weighs absolutely heavily on my mind. The fact that we can get promised that we'll have a reduction in the national debt, we'll have deregulation, a booming economy, more tax cuts to spur on more growth, and everything else like that. This man, this orange person, has never met an omnibus that he did not like and would not sign. That's going to be on my mind for the entire next 4 years if he does happen to pull this out of his ass and win. But I feel more comfortable about it, at least. I feel like the sensationalism that we got from the media was just that sensationalism, and this dude is just a normal dude who happens to have a buttload of money. So, if you have not listened to this podcast, I recommend it. I do. Especially given the fact that his opponent has decided that she is not going to attend the same kind of podcast, and we'll be talking about that in just a moment. Let's get the Rumble chat back up. I had to go to the other chat to mute out the volume over on the YouTube for my background music here. Oh, this curse is going to drive me nuts. These sunglasses are going to drive me nuts, but again, it's festive. From the Hill, Trump-Rogan interview tops 38 million views from Dominic Mastrangelo. Podcaster Joe Rogan's interview of former President Trump has earned nearly 40 million views on YouTube in just 3 days, and that doesn't count any of the off-brand podcatchers that he can happen to get to, even though he's supposed to be, quote, Spotify exclusive. That doesn't count the Spotify downloads. That's just what he did on YouTube, by the way. A YouTube video of the full, nearly 3-hour conversation had topped 38 million views by midday Tuesday, while millions more listened to the conversation on Spotify, Apple Music, and other audio providers. Trump's appearance on Rogan's show was part of a wider push to court young voters by sitting for interviews with various streamers, online influencers, and social media personalities. The former president has largely stayed away from interviews with mainstream media outlets and news networks and appeared most frequently on Fox News in the lead up to the November 5th election. Rogan has also extended an invitation for Vice President Harris to appear on his program, and on Tuesday said the campaign only offered an hour of her "Why Did We Jump Down?" of her time, wanted him to travel to her on the campaign trail, which the podcaster said was a non-starter for him. During the widely promoted interview with former President Trump, he reiterated his false claims about the 2020 presidential election, because it's the Hill and they have to put that in there. Offered his thoughts on putting RFK Jr. in his cabinet, which I stand against a lot of the conservative commentators and say I'm actually against that one. And mused about UFOs. That last part that the Hill put in here, that's bullshit. That is missing context. They did talk about UFOs, by the way. They talked about the fact that Rogan believes that they're out there, and our pilots have seen them, and Trump does not believe in them, even though he's interviewed pilots that have said that they have seen them in the air. So, don't let the Hill bullshit you, because, well, it's the Hill. They're going to try to bullshit you. From Newsweek, Trump wins over swing voters with Rogan interview and analysis. We'll go over this one briefly. From Dan Gooding, former President Trump appears to have won over swing voters after his interview with podcaster Joe Rogan, according to new analysis conducted for Newsweek. The Republican presidential candidate's change in tone went over well with many in that category. Impact Social's exclusive analysis of 40,000 people showed. Since the tracker began on June 2020 during the previous presidential campaign, Trump had not enjoyed a net positive score until his appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience. Trump presented himself in a way seldom seen on the campaign trail, Bill Snape of Impact Social wrote. Rather than ranting and railing, playing the victim and aggressor, Trump adopted a more conciliatory tone. This went down well with many swing voters who spoke of Trump in a way we have never seen before. The tracker showed Trump with a 16% positive rating against 13% negative score, with 71% having a neutral view of him. During the interview, Trump spoke of his regrets from his first term in the White House, floated policy ideas including scrapping income tax, and yeah, we'll be talking about that. And of course, it's Newsweek as well. Debunked claims about the 2020 election results. Looking at swing voters' reactions online, Impact Social found people viewed Trump as thoughtful and wise during his chat with Rogan, who challenged him on claims that the last election was honk honk. Can't say it on YouTube. Snape, said many swing voters. Is that Severus Snape, by the way? Snape, Severus Snape. I don't know why I know that, by the way, because I've only ever seen Sorcerer's Stone. I'm not in the Potter demographic. But I have seen that puppet show video, and it does stick in my head. Snape said many swing voters felt the conversation, which lasted 3 hours, helped Trump's campaign by showing his stamina ahead of the rally in Michigan on the same day. In addition, many independents thought the interview would remind voters of the reluctance of Harris to even sit down with the likes of Rogan, he wrote. The vice president's team reportedly had been in negotiations with Rogan for an appearance, but scheduling conflicts close to Election Day got in the way. Bullshit. Harris appeared on podcast Spank My Ass Harder, Daddy, and All the Smoke, in addition to radio shows hosted by Howard Stern and Charlemagne the Demon. I can't believe in the way that Howard Stern was presented in the 90s to people. And by the way, I have private parts on my watch list, just because I want to remind myself of what Stern portrayed himself as before. I don't know what he actually was. That's a little bit frustrating to me because, I mean, at the time I was a fan of him. Howard Stern's on-air persona in the 90s is part of the reason I'm sitting here. Before I realized that he completely sold out. I'm going to be completely upfront about that. CNN, of course, had to do the fact check from Daniel Dale. 32 false claims. Oh my god, the false claims. All the false claims. Oh my god, it's so false. The false claims. Donald Trump sat down Friday with prominent podcast host Joe Rogan for a controversial interview. I'm sorry, it's a conversational. That ran for nearly 3 hours, and the former president delivered his standard bombardment of false claims, at least 32 in all. Here's a fact check of 32 false claims Trump made to Rogan. This is not intended as a complete list of the inaccurate statements. Holy fuck. The alt-right propaganda about this, and it just seems to me that a lot of people are pissed that he went on Rogan. Trump repeated his frequent false claim that we had 13,099 murderers dropped in our country over the last 3 years. In reality, as the Department of Homeland Security and independent experts have noted, the official figures about immigrants with homicide convictions in the U.S. who entered the country over decades, including Trump's own admin, and not over the past 3 years, or under the Biden administration. Yeah, that's bullshit. The former president falsely claimed, I built 570 miles of wall. That's a significant exaggeration. The official government data shows 458 miles, which is still a Herculean task, by the way. And that doesn't include the fact that they revamped existing wall as well. Trump repeated a regular false claim about Harris. She was in charge of the border. She was not and is not. Also false, by the way. Trump claimed that at least 21 million people have illegally crossed the border during the Biden admin. Through September, the country had recorded under 11 million nationwide encounters. Why is that better? All right, more propaganda. The 2020 election, I can't do that one on YouTube, so we'll have to keep that one out of here. Legitimacy of the 2020 election, I can't do that one on YouTube. Amagwai says, 32 false claims, but with Trump's magic Sharpie crossing out some of them, there were only 10. Trump told a story about how he said a Washington Post ABC News poll of Wisconsin during his 2016 race against Hillary Clinton showed him down 17 points the day before the election, but he knew it was wrong because of the size of his crowds, and he ended up winning the state. I remember that part of this. The poll showing him down 17 the week of the election came out during his 2020 race against Biden, and he lost to Wisconsin that year, though by less than 1 percentage point. Again, there was probably a poll that showed him down 17 points in Wisconsin. I would have to go back and fact check that one myself, but I have not done so yet at this point. But that's the danger of going with the individual polls. That's why I go with the aggregate. Yep, can't do that one on YouTube. Trump falsely claimed that it was just before he walked in for the Friday interview that there was a ruling in a legal case where they found thousands of illegal ballots. This case did not involve illegal ballots. Rather, the judge ruled that Virginia had purged voter registrations from its rolls too close to Election Day. Yes, that one is actually true. Calling for strict voter ID laws, Trump spoke on how identification is required in other circumstances, saying, when you go to the grocery store, you give ID. This was a little vaguer than his previous declarations that you need an ID to buy groceries, which you don't, but if you want to buy liquor, and you're not in a small town, you absolutely do. I probably need an ID to buy liquor right now. Carter Commission on mail-in ballots. Trump repeated a commission led by former President Carter published a report whose primary finding was that you cannot have mail-in ballots. The one thing with Jimmy Carter, he had a very strong commission. It was no mail-in ballots. Though the commission Carter co-chaired was generally skeptical of mail-in ballots, calling absentee voting the largest source of potential honk-honk, it did not say you cannot have them. I tend to agree with that, by the way. Vegas crowd size. In his latest exaggeration about crowd sizes, Trump claimed there were 29,000 people at his event the night prior. His rally at Thursday night in Vegas was an arena with a capacity under 19,000. Yeah, they're going to do crowd sizes. They have no way to measure this one. 28,000 people sitting around the McDonald's in Bucks County. Several thousand excited supporters, but the figure wasn't 25,000 as stated by the former president later. It might have been. I can't do this. Because CNN is lying, or half-truthing, to try to fact-check somebody else. Alright, let's keep going, because we are running up on clock right now, too. We're already 40 minutes in. From CNBC, Trump accuses Taiwan of stealing U.S. chip industry. Here's what the election could bring. From Seema Modi. Former President Trump reiterated frustration with Taiwan over the weekend when he appeared on Rogan and accused Taiwan of stealing America's chip industry. Trump criticized the CHIPS Act and said he would implement tariffs on chips from Taiwan. If elected president, such tariffs would impact global leader in chipbuilding, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, whose customers include companies such as Nvidia and Apple. Shares of Taiwan Semiconductor closed down 4.3% on Monday. Taiwan, they stole our chip business, and they want protection, Trump said during his appearance on the podcast, which was published on Saturday. Every hyperscaler working on their own in-house chip, including Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, depends on the Taiwanese company. For manufacturing, UBS analysts estimated over 90% of the world's advanced chips are manufactured by Taiwan Semiconductor. Intel and Samsung are among the companies trying to compete, but they have faced a series of setbacks. Given the broader geopolitical concerns surrounding Taiwan and the risk of a China invasion, pressure has been growing on U.S. companies to build an alternative to Taiwan Semiconductor in the U.S., which I would like that as well, by the way. Intel, which has emerged as a poster child for the CHIPS Act, has faced many challenges. We want to get leading-edge infrastructure built here in the U.S., and to be honest, from a policy standpoint, it really shouldn't matter all that much who is building it, Bernstein analyst Stacy Raskin told CNBC. Raskin added that the idea that Taiwan had stolen the chip industry is ridiculous. Taiwan Semiconductor is on tap to receive nearly $7 billion from the U.S. Commerce Department to build an Arizona foundry as part of the CHIPS Act, which, again, that would bypass the tariff right there. Problem solved. Plus, it would put American workers to work. On the company's earnings call 2 weeks ago, the company's CEO, C.C. Wee, said the Arizona plant was making progress with volumes expected to ramp up in 2025. So, a few things that are moving and shaking there. I'm still not thrilled that it's only Taiwan Semiconductor that's able to do this and compete, and I do hope that some competitor gets into a point where they can compete at this, especially if they're American-made. The big one for me, you know what that is, was the income tax conversation. Unusual Whales with a video clip for us breaking. Trump says on the Rogan podcast he wants to eliminate the federal income tax, which actually that's not breaking. He's already said that before on the campaign trail. I don't think we're in the position that he could do it, but I'm interested to see where he would go to get it done if he could. And it would take an act of Congress. I don't think it would be a constitutional amendment, as the red-headed libertarian has said. But I do think it's going to take an act of Congress. Let's listen, though.
Did you just float out the idea of getting rid of income taxes and replacing it with tariffs?
Well, okay.
Were you serious about that?
Yeah, sure. But why not? Because ready? Our country was the richest relatively in the 1880s and 1890s. A president who was assassinated named McKinley. He was the tariff king. He spoke beautifully of tariffs. His language was really beautiful. We will not allow the enemy to come in and take our jobs and take our factories and take our workers and take our families unless they pay a big price. And the big price is tariffs. And he'd speak like that, but he was right. And then around in the early 1900s, they switched over stupidly to, frankly, an income tax. And you know why? Because countries were putting a lot of pressure on America. We don't want to pay tariffs. Please don't. Believe me, they control our politicians. If you look at the kind of numbers that these guys make then and now, but we had a commission meeting in the, I think it was 1887. Think of this problem. We were so rich, we had so much money, we didn't know what to do, so they set up a blue ribbon commission on tariffs, and the sole purpose is what to do with all the money we had. We were so rich because we were taxing other people for coming in and taking our jobs.
So I want to just diverge from what we're doing here, and I know I shouldn't do this because we've got so much news on tap and a lot of video clips with this, but I want to put my 2 cents in on tariffs for just a moment, because I'm on a mixed model for them. Now, I have done a news live stream, a co-op live stream, with the social media director for the Joe Jorgensen campaign. And I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you that I'm not a taxation is theft advocate. I have been for a very, very long time. I don't go as far as the character that I'm dressed up as to try to make so little money in my life that I don't have to pay any income tax. But I do believe that taxation itself is theft. I know that there are people out there who need the services, who rely on the services, who need what the taxation brings. And I don't begrudge them the fact that they exist and that they have had to do this in their lives. But I do think that there should be a more a la carte system to it. Then it's less thefty. Then you get to decide how much you put in. As far as tariffs go, I understand the liberal, the argument that the mainstream media has fed into the progressive and the liberal minds of it's just going to be a national sales tax. And it's going to make everything that you want 70 billion times more expensive. I understand the argument they're trying to go with. They're wrong. They're half right. Let me go back and put it to you that way. They're half right. A tariff is in itself a consumption tax. Now, I have fell against ideas where people have brought up of doing a flat sales tax, a consumption tax on everything. That would come out and include food as well on something like that. I've had that discussion. I understand the position that people are coming from with this. But the thing with a tariff is in the short term, yes, I will say it will make a lot of things much more expensive. Because so much of our manufacturing is dedicated and put out to foreign countries. The Chinas, the Turkeys, the Taiwans, the Hong Kongs, and China. They're taking all our jobs. They're sending them down to Venezuela, South America, the places like that. I get the fact that a lot of our manufacturing does that. Manufacturing can be tedious and mindless. Sometimes it's hard to find people over here who want to do it. But with that being said, the idea and the point is to incentivize bringing industry back into the U.S. away from these foreign countries, where they are putting people to work in the factories and the sweatshops for super cheap, so we can get super cheap goods back over here. And if it goes the way that it's supposed to go, and we bring a lot more industry back, at that point, I can choose how much I want to support the federal government based on my shopping habits. You know, I can be the guy that reads the label that says made in the USA. Oh, hey, this isn't subject to the tariff tax. Or this is a cheaper product because it wasn't tariffed when it was brought in. They didn't pass the cost of the tariff along to the customer. And I've always been an advocate of not necessarily a tariff to operate the government in and of itself. This is something that's been a pet project in my mind for a long time. I am in favor, though, of punitive tariffs with places like Japan, who charge a 100% tariff on any car that doesn't come from Mount Fuji Heavy Industries or the other big industry that they have over there. That doesn't come from one of their factories. If it has to come on a ship to get to Japan in one way or another, and it's a car, there's a 100% tariff on it. Well, with that in mind, in the ideal world that I would imagine, that anything that has a J as the first digit of its VIN, indicating it was made in Japan, can also be subject to a 100% tariff here in this country. It's only fair. They do it to our stuff. And the same thing with the European countries, that anything that they export. If they have a duty to try to disincentivize American products from entering their markets of X amount, then anything that if that same product, and I would specify to a product, that same product being sold over here that comes from that country, you got to pay the tariff too, dude. And if you want to sell more vehicles in this country, then you have to open your market up to us. You have to give us access to your customers as well. And I think that we would see a lot of these tariffs start to drop if we use them that way. As far as using it to fund the government, I don't know. I've got mixed feelings about that one. And I don't necessarily know that it would hold the government and run the government for as long as people would want it to, based on the fact that industry would come back over here and then people would start shopping smartly, avoiding the tariff. So that's my 2 cents on the way that tariffs go. I know that was a little bit of a rambly, off-directional speech, but that's where I see those things going. I did say duty. You are correct. Leon Fowle says charities did it better. Taxation is theft. Who decides what is our fair share? Yeah, that's the other part that I don't like. A lot of money that the government takes from us is wasted. Indeed. Leon Fowle, I know that you're relatively new here, but you're a person after my own heart with these arguments. Alright, now that I've given my analysis to this, let's go with CNN's analysis to this. Apparently Harris is giving a speech on the Ellipse, where Trump rallied his supporters on January 6th. Alright, CNN says Trump votes ending the federal income tax. Here's what that would mean. Doom! I've not pre-read this article. I just presume that's what CNN is going to say. From Tammy Luby and Kate Sullivan. After promising to eliminate taxes on tips, Social Security benefits, and overtime pay, former President Trump is also taking aim at the largest levy of them all, the federal income tax. With Election Day around the corner, Trump talked about his interest in ending the federal income tax in 2 high-profile interviews this week, harking back to the late 19th century when the U.S. relied on tariffs to fund federal spending. The former president has vowed to broadly impose tariffs, arguing that they can generate trillions of dollars in revenue. Speaking with Barbara's in the Bronx, in a segment that aired on Fox News on Monday, Trump said, "There's a way. If what I'm planning comes out. When we were a smart country in the 1890s, this is when the country was relatively the richest it ever was. It had all tariffs. It didn't have an income tax." Trump said after Barbara asked whether or not it would be possible to jettison the federal income tax. Now we have an income tax, and we have people that are dying. They're paying the tax, and they don't have the money to pay the tax. A few days later, Rogan asked Trump whether he was serious about replacing the federal income tax with tariffs. "Yeah, sure, why not?" Trump said during his interview on Friday. Alright. Mathematically impossible, says CNN. Sweeping tariffs are a cornerstone of Trump's economic platform for a second term. If he's elected, he has called on across-the-board tariffs of either 10 to 20% on all imports, as well as a tariff of upward of 60% on all Chinese imports. I don't know that I would go as high as 60% on Chinese imports, but again, for me, it would be just based on what they tariff our shit for. And if they want that tariff down, then they gotta lower theirs. It's only fair. The former president argues that tariffs, which he imposed to a lesser extent during his first term, would pay for his pricey array of proposals. He has repeatedly denied that American consumers would bear the brunt of the tariffs, inaccurately claiming, because it's CNN and they have to editorialize it, that foreign countries would pay the levies. Well, they would have to, otherwise they can't sell their shit here. Many federal budget experts, who all have put their endorsement to Harris, have poured cold water on the notion that tariffs could replace the income tax. It's an absurd idea for many reasons, the biggest being that it's mathematically impossible to replace the income tax with tariffs. Erica York, a senior economist and researcher director at the right-leaning Tax Foundation, told CNN imports are a much smaller tax base than taxable income, and there's no way to squeeze enough revenue from taxing imports. To fully replace taxing income, a swap like this would hike taxes on working class taxpayers and invite harmful retaliation against U.S. exports. Like already exists. Increasing tariffs would likely prompt Americans to purchase fewer imported goods. What's the downside of this argument? Canceling out at least a part of the hoped-for revenues, Brian Riedel, a senior fellow at the right-leaning Manhattan Institute, told CNN. At first blush, replacing the $2.4 trillion in income taxes would require a 75% tariff on America's $3.2 trillion in annual imports, he said. However, even that unrealistically assumes that Americans continue to purchase the same imports at nearly double the price. What's more, Trump had to spend part of the revenue raised from the tariffs he imposed on his first term bailing out industries, including agriculture, that were hurt by other nations' retaliatory actions, Riedel said. Again, I'm of the mind that since there are so many countries that do put a duty on our goods going in, then they should pay the same duty to access our markets. End of story. The Mogwai says, doom, doom, doom. Dogs and cats living together. What is this mass hysteria? So, doom and gloom, and I'm sure ABC is not going to be any better, so I'm going to skip that one. Now, hang on. We've got breaking. It's a few hours ago, I guess. Okay. But the person has been apprehended at this point. Let's just grab the breaking here. I didn't see this while I was doing the news crawl for the day. Midtown Four Seasons armed barricaded suspect is apprehended. Atlanta police and SWAT have apprehended a barricaded suspect at the Four Seasons in Midtown, where multiple shots were fired Tuesday afternoon. Officials identified the suspect as 70-year-old Jay Stevensberger, who they said was staying at the residential section of the Four Seasons, not the short-term units within the hotel. They said he fired at least 3 different types of guns and may have been armed with more weapons, including knives. A safety perimeter was quickly established, shutting down surrounding streets and the following intersections: 14th Northeast and Peachtree, 14th Northeast and Crescent, 13th Northeast and Peachtree, 13th Northeast and Crescent, 13th Northeast and Peachtree Walk. Fox 5 Atlanta spoke to witnesses who said the incident felt like something out of the video game Grand Theft Auto. Holy shit, that's awesome. I mean, it's sad that people had to lose their lives, but holy shit, that's awesome. We heard 10 shots, we walked outside, got everything on camera. The man throwing couches, shooting, very chaotic, very random. This is Atlanta, this is not a real place, said Khalil Higgins. Yeah, this is not a real place. So, they've got him. He's down. Alright, let's go back to Rogan. Mogwai says, I don't see the federal income tax to go away. I think it'll be lowered for a minute, maybe 2. Then the income tax will be jacked up like a 17-year-old's truck driving into the high school. I had that truck. I did. When I was 17, in fact. Leon Fowler says, who doesn't love a good duty? Mog says, it's okay. They're already voting for Harris, even if he didn't. To duty or die, compacted bowels are lethal. Call Robo-Rooter if you flush a towel. We can also help with your impacted bowel. Robo-Rooter! Thank you, Futurama. From the New York Post, Rogan shoots down Harris's podcast interview over campaign's demands. Rogan said he shot down a podcast interview with President Harris after the campaign made several demands, but insists he hopes it can still happen. It is officially dead at this point. The mega-popular podcaster said the Democratic presidential nominee's team had wanted him to travel to her and for their chat to last only an hour. Now look, man, they offered a date for Tuesday, but I would have to travel, and they only wanted to do an hour. And I strongly feel that it's the best way to do this. The studio in Austin. You guys try any DMT? Rogan said in a statement on X, adding that the Harris campaign has not passed on doing the podcast. Look, my sincere wish is to just have a nice conversation, to get to know her as a human being. I really hope we can make it happen. Meanwhile, Rogan's refusal to compromise with the Harris team followed reports that he'd been in negotiations for a sit-down with her for weeks, but they opted to pull the plug. Rogan confirmed during the gabfest with Trump that talks to host Harris on his platform were still ongoing, but he didn't elaborate any further. Trump seized. Republicans pounce on the opportunity, scoffing at the idea of Harris sitting down for a 3-hour interview. Look, can you imagine Kamala doing the show? She'll be laying on the floor. If she did this kind of interview with you, look, I hope she does, because it would be a mess. She'd be laying on the floor, comatose. She'd be saying, calling the medics. Now, one thing I've got to say, as an interviewer myself, but also with a very small channel, I've tried to meet people where they are, especially with Ed Talk, because of the fact of, I have different days off than most people do. Most people are off Saturday, Sunday. I'm off Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, but I'm here for Tuesday, obviously, for Contemporary. But with that being said, when I talked to Anna Voltis yesterday, it was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, my time, on a Monday, which is not a normal time for people to not be at work. With Kat, I followed Friday for that. Because that was the only time that she had available. But I'm not the number one podcaster in the world with 38 million viewers. Rogan doesn't need Harris's interview to gain viewers. He's making a buttload of money from Spotify for smoking weed on air and asking people crazy shit. And I don't like Rogan personally, but I always appreciate when he has a guest on that I am interested in, based on the fact that he actually gets real conversation out of these people, which he does. He's very good at that. I just can't sit for a 3-hour slog 3 times a week with somebody that I don't know who it is, some comedian that I've never fucking heard of. But if Fantasy is on, I'll sit and listen to her. When Trump was on, I listened to that one. If Harris got on, I would listen to that one. I do want to listen to the Sandler one. I wanted to listen to the Rogers one, but that's so outdated at this point. I'd never get a chance to go back and do that one again and have it even be relevant. I like the Ron White one. I listened when Tim Pool was on, when Benny Boy was on. People in the sphere of influence that I've listened to in the past or currently listen to, those people I'll go and listen to. I'd like to see Styx on Rogan, honestly. I think that would be a great time. But no, for the Harris campaign to make demands of that, that's laughable. She needs him because she needs access to his audience. He doesn't need her. And it sounds like he's going to interview Vance in her place anyway, so. Dual Helix says, "You're styling tonight. All my sunglasses are polarized, so they don't work well at the computer. Yeah, these are prescription. That's the only reason I'm wearing these. Normally for the Dale Gribble costume, I would wear the aviators, the ones that I use for the Razor Fist costume, because I still have them. But I wouldn't be able to see the screen. The next time I go to the eye doctor, I am actually going to see if I can get a set of aviators in prescription. I don't think I can, but I want to see if I can. Because I like the aviators look. I just can't get them in prescription. Alright, Leon Fowles says, I don't think most are going to change their minds at this point. I can't vote for either one. And Chase is a huge disappointment. I am only voting Trump because it's against Harris. I don't know that I could vote for him. Although, after the Rogan interview, like I said, I do feel a little bit more comfortable about it. The Mogwai says, Lindsay doesn't like to use a snake to free him up, but I believe he's tried a gerbil. Gross. Leon Fowles says, I watched the Trump interview. I didn't want to, but when I started it, I listened to the end, not interested in the MMA interviews of the people that I've never heard of. Yeah, same here. Like some stand-up comedian I'd never heard of before. And some of these people, people have tried to get me into, like KTZed has tried to get me into, I think it was Tim Dillon, one of the regular guests over on Rogan. I don't care enough about this person to do so, to listen like that. I've probably listened to maybe 15 Rogan episodes in full. One of those was the RFK Jr. one. And when I listened to that, I knew that that guy was never going to be president. Dual Helix says, you totally can get aviator sunglasses. The Ray-Bans are like $180, not cheap, but you can totally get them. Well, the only problem that I would have with that is I have a very, very strong prescription. So I don't know how that would work in a set of aviators. Like, even these ones are tremendously thick in the glasses part. This is like a $400 pair of glasses. Because my insurance didn't cover the second pair. They covered the primary pair, my clear ones. But I also got them... They're really old. I got them in like 2015. I got them 2 prescriptions ago. And I'm probably doing irreparable damage to my eyes by using them. But I can see the screen. Alright. So, from Fox News, Vance to sit down with Rogan after Harris' appearance scrapped. From Lindsay Cornick. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance is set to record the JRE on Wednesday, so tomorrow night. While we're playing Bioshock, by the way. Dual Helix has donated $5 for the Prescription Aviators Fund. The announcement came shortly after Rogan revealed on X that there were negotiations to have Vice President Harris appear on a show on Tuesday. Also, for the record, the Harris campaign has not passed on doing the podcast, Rogan wrote late on Monday. They offered a date for Tuesday, but I would have had to travel to her, and they only wanted to do an hour. I strongly feel the best way to do it is in the studio in Austin. So, by the way, I'll be listening to that on Thursday. So, that'll be an interesting one to see. As far as Harris goes, too, and a lot of people were bringing up the fact of that she went on like the Spank My Ass Harder Daddy podcast and things like that. And I'll admit to the fact, I know she went to Stern Studio for Sirius XM, and she went on Charlemagne the Man's studio. She went to that one, but like when Alex decided that she had to go back and have this interview, she did go to DC, and then the producer set up an interview room for her in the hotel she was staying at. So she did travel too. I know a lot of people say, oh, well, Harris traveled for Spank My Ass Harder Daddy podcast. No, she didn't. Alex did go to that and ran a much, much shorter interview than she normally does for that one. She played by the rules, but the other side of that is that there's nobody who's listening to Give It To Me Harder, Daddy, who wasn't already going to vote for Harris. That was just not a thing that was going to happen. We're still talking about the Rogan thing. Now we're actually going to move on to Madison Square Garden, finally. Dual Heel says, I got banned from X after getting really drunk and calling Massey the F word. Why would you get banned for calling Massey a friend? A friend of liberty. I call Massey a friend of liberty all the time. Leon Fowle says, I learned from my mistake of letting others convince me to listen to funny person Jim Gaffigan, who has turned out to be a scared little boy when it came to the COVID nonsense. He freaked out. I can't even stand to watch that more now. Jim Gaffigan has gone downhill. Like, I like Gaffigan when he first came out, when he did the Hot Pockets sketch. I thought that was funny. But, like, later Gaffigan, no, I can see where you're coming from for that one. Alright. Before we go into the Madison Square Garden, we're going to hear what Hillary had to say about it first. Chuck Calesto, breaking, Hillary Clinton just claimed that Trump is headed to Madison Square Garden this weekend to reenact the 1939 National Socialist Workers' Party rally. According to Clinton, supporting Trump makes you a National Socialist Workers' Party member. Let's listen.
And one other thing that you'll see next week, Caitlin, is Trump actually reenacting the Madison Square Garden rally in 1939. I write about this in my book. President Franklin Roosevelt was appalled that neo-Nazis, fascists in America were lining up to essentially pledge their support for the kind of government that they were seeing in Germany. So I don't think we can ignore it. And one other thing that you'll see next week, Caitlin, is...
And of course it's Caitlin Collins too. It couldn't literally be anybody else but Caitlin Collins. And that was the thing that they tried to push on this entire... Now, they've had Diddy concerts at Madison Square Garden. Carlin has performed at Madison Square Garden. Several other comedians that are less important than Carlin have performed at Madison Square Garden. But it's just because the Donald wanted to go there that this is now suddenly a Nazi rally. Trust me, Carlin was not a Nazi. Most of these other woke leftoid comedians are not Nazis. Didn't Taylor Tomlinson play Madison Square Garden at one point? And she's a full-out fucking leftoid. But don't let facts get in the way of a good narrative. Alright, so let's take 5 takeaways from Trump's Madison Square Garden rally, which, by the way, several city blocks and millions of people in the overflow to a sold-out Madison Square Garden. From Brett Samuels. Let's see. It's only because I care. That's my weakness. Somehow I give a damn. These people are Trump, Trump, Trump. They have nothing. Yeah, I don't know what Harris's policies are. Other than here's a bunch of free stuff that I have no idea how I'm going to pay for or get past Congress. Leon Fowle says, okay, if they can't lock her up, can this crazy woman just please go away? Maybe. Former President Trump had a rally at Sunday at Madison Square Garden, kicking off the final full week of his campaign in the heart of Manhattan. The Trump campaign trotted out a number of high-profile speakers to excite the crowd, and while Trump is unlikely to be competitive in New York on Election Day, which I don't necessarily believe that either, I think that Harris is still going to win New York, but I think it's going to be closer than a lot of people are comfortable with. The event served as a way to generate significant media attention and deliver something akin to a closing message to voters. Alright, Trump's closing messages sound familiar. The former president's Madison Square Garden rally was billed as the opening salvo of his closing arguments to voters just 9 days before Election Day. There were signs of a closing message scattered throughout Trump's speech. He opened his remarks by asking attendees if they were better off than they were 4 years ago. On the issue, after issue, Kamala broke it, but I will fix it, and we're going to fix it. But those looking for a clearer, more concise message heard more of the same from Trump as he repeated many of the same attacks on Harris's intelligence, described the U.S. as an occupied country because of the surge in immigration, and emphasized his plans to impose tariffs on foreign imports. Trump brings out the high-profile allies, which, by the way, reminder, this was an 8-hour campaign event. Tucker Carlson, Elon Musk, J.D. Vance, Trump Jr., RFK Jr., Hulk Hogan, Speaker Johnson were among those who took the stage ahead of the former president. Melania Trump made an extremely rare campaign appearance. The slew of speakers are unlikely to win over voters on the fence, but their presence on the trail could boost enthusiasm among Trump's base and among the less reliable voting blocs, such as young men. Guest speakers stir controversy. No, one guest speaker spurred controversy. Comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, who goes by Kill Tony, delivered a set that included an inflammatory attack on Puerto Rico. And a bunch of other stuff, but that's the only thing anybody in the world heard. What color is that dress? Chocolate chimchin? See my new avatar? I photoshopped it out of AliExpress. Watch part pics. Nice. I got most of the parts. I'm excited to see if I have what it takes to be a watchmaker. Well, I'm excited for you. Mogg says the opening comment was a mistake, and Hulk Hogan struggling to rip his shirt was cringe. That was my takeaway. I didn't watch. I'm not going to lie. I get 2 days where I don't have to do anything political, and I take advantage of them. There's a lot going on, like, I don't know if you know, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. I think it's called Puerto Rico, Hinchcliffe said, eliciting mixed reactions from the crowd. Harris's Paige Shills noted Hinchcliffe's remarks came as the vice president was in Philadelphia, speaking at a Puerto Rican restaurant, where she detailed her plans to assist the island and bolster its electrical grid. Others noted the key battleground of Pennsylvania is home to hundreds of thousands of Puerto Ricans. Carlson mocked Harris's racial identity. Don't care. Sid Rosenberg, New York City radio host whose show Trump calls into periodically, blasted Democrats in derogatory and explicit terms. She's some kind of sick bastard, that Hillary Clinton. What a sick son of a bitch. The whole fucking party, a bunch of degenerates. I don't know, where's the lie? Giuliani spent a portion of his remarks fear-mongering about Palestinians, saying they're taught to kill us at 2 years old and are on the side of terrorists. Enemy from within, of course, are deep state, but they took it out of context. And a tax proposal. I'm announcing a new policy today that will support a tax credit for family caregivers who take care of a parent or a loved one. It's about time that they were recognized, Trump said. Which, to me, seems like a better idea than front-ending it through Medicare. You back-end it, you let people keep a little bit more of their own money, and it goes a little bit further. So, that's their takeaways. NBC. Trump's Madison Square Garden rally overshadowed by his allies' crude and racist remarks. Or, just one of them. Do I think it was intelligent to call Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage? No. Do I think it's campaign ending? Also no at this point. From ABC News, Trump calls Madison Square Garden a love fest amid backlash over Speaker's racist remark. And I'm not going to put the S on this because there was only the one. From Lali Ipsa, Surin, Kim, Kelsey Walsh, and Alexandra Hutzler. And even calling that racist, I think, is a stretch because it had nothing to do with the people. It was the island and the corruption in their government, in their local government. Can't say that one on YouTube. Dual Helix. Helix tried to quit drinking, but that didn't work out very well. President Trump called his rally at Madison Square Garden a love fest on Tuesday, as backlash continues over racist and crude comments made by some speakers at the iconic New York City venue. Trump spoke about the rally near the end of his remarks at Mar-a-Lago on Tuesday that were largely focused on swiping at Harris' record, ahead of her speech at Ellipse in Washington, D.C., where she'll make a closing argument to voters. It was like a love fest. An absolute love fest. It was my honor to be involved. I don't think anybody's ever seen what happened the other night in Madison Square Garden. The love. Oh my God, the love in that room. It was breathtaking. And you could have filled it many, many times with people who were unable to get in, Trump said. It's a love fest. I'm your favorite president. Everybody loves me. And on the opposite side, from Fox News, Trump claims Harris runs a campaign of absolute hate following backlash to Madison Square Garden rally. From Stephanie Price. Oh, you paywall this one, you fuckwits. Well, fuck you then. Let's get this off of here so I don't have to... Well, there's an internal ad blocker anyway, so... From MSDNC, the spirit of George Wallace was all over Trump's Madison Square Garden rally. Why? Because of course it was. Because Trump is a Nazi is the only thing they have. The Mogwai says, no, Puerto Rico isn't a floating island of garbage. That's the Dominican Republic. Wait, okay, I might want to run for office one day, so that joke was stopped. Brutal. You feel like you've all known this somewhere. Never again will you read about Berlin in the 30s without remembering this wild confrontation. Here of two irrational forces, the American sickness has finally been localized. These words were written about a noxious political rally that took place shortly before the presidential election at New York City's Madison Square Garden, but they don't refer to what happened on Saturday night or Sunday night when Trump spoke at the world's most famous arena. Rather, they were written nearly 50 years ago in '68 by Richard Strout, a columnist for the New Republic, which, I mean, there's your first problem right there. When another demagogue preaching division and fear spoke at Madison Square Garden, former Alabama Governor George Wallace. In a year of terrifying political events that shone bright and unsettling light on this racism, intolerance, and hatred in America, Wallace's '68 pre-election eve speech in New York was arguably one of the most unsettling. In the heart of liberal America, Wallace's army of followers gathered, and that was the case in every other venue where Wallace spoke that year. Violence soon followed. Outside the arena, fistfights and shoving matches broke out with anti-communist John Birchers, neo-Nazis and Klansmen on one side, and Trotskyites, yippies, and black power activists on the other. A country music band played the Star-Spangled Banner and God Bless America, Yankee Doodle Dandy, and Dixie, while the assembled crowd chanted, "Blanks, get out. Go back to Africa, white power. The protesters who had sneaked their way past security responded with pig, 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 and 2468, we don't want a fascist state. Charming. But again, that's all these people have. They don't have any actual substance. It was like Leon Fowles said. There's nothing there. They just scream Nazi, 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 fascist, fascist, fascist over and over again, hoping it sticks. And it's not. Were there fistfights outside of the arena? No, not as far as I know. And I'm sure if there were, it'd be plastered all over every single news outlet. We would have seen those if they'd happened. And again, the big one that gets me is the fact that, we have the brown shirt rally at Madison Square Garden that we hear about from the 40s. The Hitler-esque one from the 40s or whatever the fuck it was. I don't even know what it was. Nobody even knew that happened at Madison Square Garden. Before Sunday night. Before everyone went and freaked out over the fact that Trump spoke at Madison Square Garden. Nazis spoke at Madison Square Garden. He's exactly like George Wallace. Again, with all the basketball games that have happened at Madison Square Garden since then, with all the concerts, Taylor Swift has performed there. Is she a Nazi? George Carlin has performed there. Is he a Nazi? No. Helix says that the fistfights never happened. It was infiltrators. They create nothing. I'm still going to the moon. I'm going to mine the creep. Oh, are you playing StarCraft? Mine the creep? No, you don't mine creep in StarCraft. Magua says, George Wallace, the black comedian? No, not that George Wallace. Leon Fowles says, Harris is having a rally in D.C. Is this where she announces that she's dumber than she now appears to be? That's also another good question, by the way, on that. Harris is holding a rally in the Ellipse. Is that an insurrection? Because somebody they didn't like had a rally at the Madison Square Garden once, 50 years ago. I mean, that automatically makes Trump a racist over that, and a Nazi and everything else. So, if Harris is having a rally at the Ellipse, where supposedly the insurrection started, does that make her an insurrectionist? That's an uncomfortable question to ask. I know you're going to have to listen to The View, and I apologize. Joyless Behar wants a list of people who attended Trump's Nuremberg rally at Madison Square Garden. When socialists start making lists, it's time to get worried. 2 video clips on this one.
Oh, we have a rule in comedy. If you're a good comedian, you don't punch down, you punch up. You go after the big guys, You don't take a shot at a little island of people who have problems in this country because of bigotry, the Puerto Rican population, and the Jews and whoever else you're going after. It's not funny. I mean, you don't do that type of joke at this Nuremberg rally. I mean, come on.
And the other clip with that one?
Well, the other thing is, and we've never talked about it at this table, but have you heard that joke they keep making about Governor Tim Walz wearing a tampon? Yeah. The sexism in their jokes, they keep saying, go change your tampon, about
That's
Governor
not the
Tim
joke.
Walz. Yeah. The sexism, they need
not even
women.
close to
What does that even mean?
It's like women are
saying
weak,
you're
pathetic,
you're
you
weak.
have a tampon in.
Yeah,
We're so weak,
so
you're
gross.
scared. You guys are pooping your pants because you got a strong woman
On the other side.
who's laying out all of what she wants to do, and you couldn't do it. Go ahead.
You know women voters are your problem, and yet you continue to do this bro culture rally that like is not going to appeal to one woman I've ever known in my life.
That's not even close to what the fucking joke is, you morons. The joke is the fact that he put tampons in men's rooms. It has nothing to do with him being weak. You're an idiot. But yes, the fact that Behar wants a list of the people that are out there. Huh. The View lashes out at Dr. Phil for attending the Madison Square Garden rally.
By the way, what was Dr. Phil doing there?
Yeah,
that is a major disappointment.
Well, and by the way, he went after like diversity. He literally got his job because of Oprah, a woman who excelled as a black woman in media. But now and I am tracking the early voting like a psychopath. I am refreshing.
All right, so that's enough of that. By the way, I want to talk briefly on that tracking the early voting thing. I hate that Musk is putting those numbers out there every day, because all he's doing is posting the high score that the Democrats have to beat. All right, what else do we got? We got a bunch more stuff here. Going back to the floating island of garbage. So, it's apparently okay to make a racist joke about brown people if you're a Democrat. Jack Posobiec, yesterday at a Tim Walz rally, George Lopez made a joke about Mexican stealing. Apparently Democrats only care when their comedians make jokes. Or, I'm sorry, only don't care when their comedians make jokes. So listen.
Donald Trump said he was going to build a wall, and George Lopez said, you better build it in one day, because if you leave that material out there overnight. Donald Trump said he was going to build.
Hypocrisy thy name be Democrats. Let's keep going. Where's my cursor? There it is. So this one I wanted to touch on because I don't believe it. And Mogwai's cat is actually going to jump up when I say the reason I don't believe this one here. Another one from Posobiec. Biden is telling advisors the election is dead and buried, and calling Kamala an innate sucker per a White House official. Now, mind you, no identifying marks, no name on the text message. This morning, B conveyed to multiple advisors that the election was dead and buried and called K an innate sucker and too credulous from the starting line. Apparently, slammed her schedule versus 45s and said the race has been a classic hare and tortoise, but the hare is also stupid and not just lazy. His coherency when asked about her is second to no other subject. There is a special button in that head of his for her that's a moment to behold. Been referring to Obama and virtually everyone who forced him out as suckers and jackasses. So, I mean, if that's true, which I don't believe, I am grain of salt mode on this one, because that's an unnamed source right there. Then, well, we also know where the suckers and losers hoax came from. And friend of the show, Stephanie, still not advice, over on X, says, I don't even care if this is true. I'm going to enjoy my popcorn. I do care if it's true, though. Here's a interesting video clip. I don't know what's going on with this. Colin Rugg says Harris is at a rally in Houston. Texas descends into chaos as she fails to control the rally attendees. Boos and yelling were heard at the rally as Harris failed to calm down the rowdy crowd. It's unclear at the moment what's exactly going on. Yeah, I'm not sure either. Yeah, she has to make a crowd size joke. And now I'm listening to this a little bit closer, and it does sound like the crowd is saying Donald Trump, Donald Trump. You're very distracted. That's interesting, because I thought that Texas was all in for Harris. Yeah, she has no idea what's going on or what to do for hecklers. Apparently there's stuff in the comments I can't read. From the Daily Wire, Kamala crowd goes silent at rally and viral clip. Also from Rug, Harris's crowd is completely stumped after she tells them to all start shouting their own names. The moment came after a crowd started a Kamala chant. Now I want you to shout your own names. Do that. And the crowd goes silent.
Okay, now I want each of you to shout your own name. Do that. Because it's about all of us.
She is fucking hammered.
And listen, I have fought my whole career to put the people first.
I spent my 20s in the bottle. I recognize that. That was not her not being able to read the crowd. That was her being fucking drunk as shit. Palm says there's a difference when a member of the group makes the jokes. Kind of like how the black people use the N-word at each other, but we can't and shouldn't use it. I use it. Leon Powell says, is that George Lopez? Wow, he looks like he's gone completely off his meds. What word is that? Thank you, Leon. If she's taking some of Mother's Little Helper, she's taking something. Yeah, I know that. I know that one very well. My dad always says drinking is a performance art. You got another clip here from the CNN town hall, which I mean, this is all that I have for that one on the stack because of the fact that we're an hour 40 in, and I've still got all of this over here. And I can't do a Thursday show because I've actually got things going on Thursday.
Is there something you can point to in your life, political life, or in your life in the last 4 years that you think is a mistake that you have learned from?
I mean, I've made many mistakes. and they range from, if you've ever parented a child, you make lots of mistakes too. In my role as vice president, I've probably worked very hard at making sure that I am well versed on issues, and I think that is very important. It's a mistake not to be well versed on an issue and feel compelled to answer a question.
Is there something you can...
The front runner for the Democratic Party, everyone. Apparently she's got a new accent, too. And wokeness. Breaking Kamala Harris unveils a new accent in a black Philadelphia church. She did the same thing on Sterling Sharp's podcast, too, by the way.
Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. The path...
I apologize. She didn't do that on Shannon Sharp's podcast. That's a new one to me. Holy crap. What, is she trying to be Martin Luther King right there? I really need to pre-listen to some of these clips before I get into this, so I'm not blown away by this.
Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. The path may seem hard, the work may seem heavy, but joy cometh in the morning, and church morning is on its way. Weeping may endure for...
Oh my God. I have no words. Again, other than the fact that I should have pre-listened to that one. That was not one I should have let myself be surprised by. I actually got a good jab in on this one myself. I'll explain why in just a bit. Media outlets ripped over claim that Beyonce would perform at Kamala Harris rally. Bait and switch. From Nicholas Lanham. Oh, they paywalled this fucker too. You fuckers. So, I can paraphrase off of this one because I actually had some fun with this one. So, they had... Harris had a rally in Texas, in Houston, where she had promised that there would be a Beyonce Knowles performance in there. Like, she'd come out, and the implication was that she would sing. Now, they never actually expressly said that Beyonce would come out and sing, but it was implied that she would, like, it was going to be a performance. Knowles got up on the stage and gave a 3-minute speech and left again. And it was funny because I got one of those mass texts that come from the DNC, who for whatever reason think my name is fucking Deborah. And I have fun with those fuck sticks constantly when they do. But she told me that the guy from Mumford & Sons is going to be there, and a few other indie artists that some I've heard of, some I haven't, are going to be there. And asked me, Deborah, if I'm willing to be there, if I'm going to be there for this big Harris rally. And I said, that depends. Is it going to be a bait and switch, like the Beyonce concert? And I got a response back from whoever the staffer was, and said, "Good to know. Have a nice day." I shared that in the Discord. If you're in the Discord, I didn't share the response. I could screenshot that one. No, when I switched to Brave, because it's got an internal ad blocker to it, I stopped archiving the Fox News articles because they don't give me the big warning of, please turn off your ad blocker, because internal to the browser. But I forget that Fox only lets you read like 3 articles and then they paywall everything else. So I just need to remember to put it through archive.today again, is what happened. Leon says, she's a hoe, right? Slept with all kinds of dudes to get ahead in her life. Now she's just a worn-out hoe. Why don't these women understand they should work on improving their minds and their manners since their looks are eventually gone? Oh good, now she's channeling Martin Luther King. What a phony. Deborah. No, it's the first one. D-E-B-R-A. Should show up as Deborah just because. Could you convince you to cross-dress for a bit? No comment. Leon says, a guy named Deborah. I don't know if it's as good as a guy named Sue, but we can roll with it. Let me get my guitar. I almost put this in things that I like today, but there was an article that went with it. Mostly peaceful memes says, finding out Tim Walz had an affair with a Chinese communist daughter. Wait, Tim Walz is straight? But it is serious, so... Tim Walz accused of pushing Chinese Communist Party official's daughter to brink of suicide during storm-tossed love affair in the 80s. Made me feel cheap. From Josh Christensen. Democratic Vice Presidential nominee Tim Walz had a love affair with the daughter of a Chinese Communist Party official during his teaching stint at Foshan that was so stormy it drove her to the brink of suicide, the Post has learned. Jenna Wang, 59, told the Post in a phone interview Monday that she had fallen head over heels for the now Minnesota governor when he was a young high school English instructor in Foshan, Guangdong Province, China. Guangdong. Not bad. Wang expected the passionate 89 affair to end in a proposal, but instead it resulted in a breakup that made her consider taking her own life. I was deeply insulted, hurt, and I had to leave that place because many people knew that we had a relationship, Wang explained, saying that Walz had implied he intended to marry her. That including sending Wang letters after returning to the U.S. over the following summer, and even asking for a passport-sized photo of her to be sent back to Denver, she said, implying Walz was helping her to obtain a visa. His lack of character as a man, responsible person who had worked on education or the military, she added, I thought that he also loved me. I loved him. Now, I am going to hold this to the same standard I hold all of the rest of the allegations like this. There are only two people in the world who know what happened here. Wang and Walz. Nobody else in the world knows what's going to happen. We can all speculate based on Walz's history as a liar and probably partisan leanings one way or the other. But nobody's ever going to know what happened there except for Tim Walz and Jenna Wang. Period. I'm going to fully grain of salt this one. It's still funny to think of the fact that Walz is actually straight, but I got to grain of salt this one. I held Tara Reid to the same standard. I held Christine Blasey Ford to the same standard. It's several decades old. It's happening 2 weeks before a major election. To a person who is controversial on one side or the other. I even hold E. Jean Carroll to the same standard on that one. I got a grain of salt this one. So one of the big explosions this week, and I got a bunch of different articles for this, but I'm only going to do a couple of them. Newspapers that backed Biden last time will not endorse Harris. From Emma Marsden. Several newspapers that endorsed Biden over Trump in 2020 have not endorsed Harris for the 2024 election. In the 2020 election, Biden received endorsements from major national and regional newspapers, as well as some traditionally conservative publications. The notable show of support from the press for Biden came after 4 years of Trump in office. However, many newspapers that have endorsed the president in 2020 have declined to endorse his successor for the nomination after he stepped down from the race in July. Matt Walsh, head of the School of Journalism, Media Culture, and Cardiff University, UK, not that Matt Walsh, by the way, told Newsweek some papers are refusing to risk endorsing a presidential candidate for 2 reasons. Firstly, this is a moral failure by newspapers, which are failing their audiences by refusing to make clear judgments about the candidate. But it also demonstrates the increasing weakness of legacy media. Newspapers are no longer financially robust and are unwilling to risk losing subscribers by supporting candidates in a polarized election. Holy shit. The backlash that came from this. Wow, Helix went nuts over here. Jeez. Those of you who are not on Rumble are missing out. This is good stuff, and most of it I cannot read on YouTube. Here's the one thing I can read on YouTube, on Rumble. This bottle of kombucha that I've been brewing. Turbo kombucha. Nice. Equal opportunity laughs for all digs at politicians. Thanks, Pomnuria. Leon says, how dare you belittle the service of the war veteran Walls? He carried a weapon of war in the war for your mind. He woes me not, said so, Chinese damsel in distress. Tim fought the Battle of Pasta Hill, and he held out until the last string of spaghetti. Alright, on this newspaper thing, because this is, it's Helix, Dual Helix, over on Rumble, who would be Beam Me Up Mr. Scott over on YouTube. Let's see. The thing on this newspapers, going back to this though, is, like, realistically, I prefer that they don't endorse any candidate. I don't endorse any candidate. I'm voting against a candidate this time through myself, but I am openly biased in my views of the government. But if you're going to be a news outlet, you should have the ability to be unbiased. Therefore, not trying to swing the election one way or the other. But that's not how our little friends over on the left thought about it when they had to sit and whine and cry about the fact that they're not playing the way that I want them to play. Oh my god. Oh my god. As you see a wave of celebrity cancellations for the Washington Post over this. No, a newspaper should not be, in and of itself, making an endorsement one way or the other. They should be delivering the news in an open fashion from both sides, and actually having writers from both sides of the aisle delivering the news. So you can look at it from both angles, and try to find where the center is. So I'm glad for this, but I'm also not a seething leftoid who has to have an echo chamber fed to me constantly. There's one of the celebrity ones, Mark Hamill. I just canceled the newspaper that told us democracy dies in darkness. But it went further than that. Bad Hombre says Bezos is doubling down in a meeting this morning with the leftist journalists, threatening to walk out unless he reverses course and endorses Harris. Immediately, he told them that they can fuck off, and that WAPO will be hiring more Trump-friendly conservative voices, and that they can pound sand. which I'm sure is not exactly how that happened. I'm sure that went a different direction. From the New York Post, the Washington Post owner Jeff Bezos wants more conservative opinion writers at the paper, per report from Ariel Zilber. Washington Post owner Bezos has reportedly given the newspaper a mandate to add more conservative voices to its opinion section, even as he remains silent over the broadsheet's decision not to endorse a candidate in the 2024 election. Bezos, the world's second richest person with a fortune that Bloomberg valued at $211 billion as of Monday, is keen on getting a more ideologically diverse readership by expanding the newspaper's reach among right-leaning audiences, according to a report in the New York Times, a former newspaper. The Amazon founder, meanwhile, has remained silent over the non-endorsement. He has not spoken publicly amid protests from high-level staffers and prominent figures such as Watergate reporters Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein. Marty Baron, who was executive editor at the newspaper when Bezos bought the Post more than a decade ago, denounced the move as an act of cowardice. Washington Post staffers were reeling over Bezos' decision to block the Harris endorsement because the editorial board had already written up the endorsement, but he said no, by the way. A draft of which was said to be typed up and ready for publication. The newspaper's own reporters published an article which claimed Bezos himself made the decision to veto the endorsement, a move that raised eyebrows since it broke with a tradition of 36 years less than 2 weeks before the election. Which is fine, but the issue with that is, again, the journalistic staff is going to remain largely the same. Collegiate level writers from far left universities who are going to put their own spin and make the journalistic side of the Post look like an op-ed page. And the only thing that he's looking for balance for is in the op-eds. And that's a part of the reason that he's not wanting to endorse, because numerically it is looking like Trump presidency for 2025 and beyond. I don't know what's actually going to happen, but in the case that the Donald gets in, that endorsement means that staffers for Donald, cabinet members, administration members, and congresspeople are going to find another outlet to go right in. For whatever reason, they'll do it in the Hill. And I don't know why. And he wants to get these op-eds in there to use them to sell ads and WAPO subscriptions. Slate, with a little bit of news for you. Don't cancel your subscription to the Washington Post. There's a better way to rebuke Bezos without punishing the very journalists you're claiming to support. TLDR, and we'll look at a little bit of this one here still, but TLDR, they're going to tell you to cancel your Amazon subscription. Which they've been doing for, I don't know, umpteen fucking years already anyway. Leon Fall has to go to the store, be back soon. This is interesting. Palma's going to go off, going to head home and put Small Human to bed. Oh yeah, that's right, because it's Tuesday, it's dance night. If you're like me, your social media feeds for the past few days have been full of posts with screenshots of "We've canceled your subscription," notices and comments to the effect of "This will not stand." Washington Post, never before have so many people, 200,000 according to one report, gotten such an ecstatic hit of online righteousness out of saving themselves $200 a year. Bezos alone is responsible for this pathetically unconvincing attempt to portray the Post as neutral in the race, and late Monday the paper published his self-defense, an unconvincing assertion that this last-minute change in editorial policy was meant to correct the perception that the Post is biased. Screen down. Those who are showily canceling must surely be aware, thanks to their subscriptions, of the breadth and depth of the Post reporting. I read 3 or 4 Post articles every day, and I don't live anywhere near DC. In the weeks before the current scandal, I read this terrific piece about how an alarming conspiracy-addled militia group tried to take over a North Carolina town in the aftermath of Helene, which didn't happen, by the way. I read this report by Ben Brash on how Florida's health department has tried to criminalize TV stations, etc., etc., etc. When you cancel your subscription to the Post, you don't punish Bezos, you punish the journalists who write such stories that live in your echo chamber. But canceling Amazon Prime and communicating your reasons for doing so is a step you can take that directly rebukes Bezos. Now, mind you, you won't get your foot cream, your vibrator, and your vintage clothing delivered to your door in 2 days for free. And trust me, I think you're going to crack on that first. And number 2, and this is the dumbest fucking part of this whole thing. Bezos divested from Amazon. Like 5 years ago, when he got his divorce. So, I don't know what you think you're doing by punishing him by canceling Prime. Yes, he's still a very large stockholder in the company, but as far as his primary ownership of it, he's divested. You dumb fucks. So, there you go. The meltdown there. Alright, what else do we have here? Oh, I found these ones interesting. This also should have gone on things that I like, but I want to get to some of this stuff here too. But I want to touch on this one, because AOC and I actually agree on something for once. AOC says plenty of people aren't happy about Kamala Harris campaigning along with Liz Cheney. Which to me, and I said this at the beginning, when we got the endorsement of Dick Cheney, the first thing that I looked at was the fact of how many of us core millennials, like me, who was anti-Bush, and most of us were anti-Bush at the time. I'm not a Republican. I was anti-Bush in the early 2000s. Are now sitting here, I mean, you have this big hold on the core millennial voting demographic, and now you're going to tell these people who protested against Bush to take the advice of Dick Cheney on who to support for president. You know, the architect of the Iraq War, that Dick Cheney, the person you hate, the person that you called the devil for so long, and rightfully so, by the way. And now we're campaigning alongside Liz Cheney, who again was the same evil kind of person that these people hated because of her last name and the fact that the newspaper and the TV person told them to. Yeah, AOC brings up a good point. I can't believe I just said those words, but let's listen. Hang on, we gotta get some volume in here.
Campaigning together. Is that in the House, you guys butt heads on issues over and over again? She calls Liz Cheney a true patriot when they were campaigning together. Is that hurting Kamala Harris with more progressive voters?
Well, listen, I think there's plenty of people that aren't happy about that. And I think that is part of the nature of putting together a coalition. I don't love it, but that doesn't mean that we aren't on the same team and we aren't on the same page when it comes to who is unequivocally the better candidate in order to win the presidential election.
And I never thought that I'd actually see the day where the news media, the propaganda arm of the Democrat Party, is telling core millennials to get behind the pick of Richard Cheney it's mind-boggling to me, actually, the fact that this has actually happened. And people are just expected to be okay with this. By the way, in an attempt to appeal to young male voters that the Harris campaign is floundering with, Walz and AOC to play Madden on Twitch in an appeal to young men, which I understand. I don't know a lot of people that go on Twitch to watch Madden, by the way. Unless, of course, they're Democrat activists at this point. I've never gone for Madden. I don't enjoy Madden either. If I'm going to watch football, I want to watch the pros play. I don't want to play myself. And I don't want to watch a video gamer play as Madden. I'd rather watch a Fallout stream. Or a Mass Effect stream. If I'm going to watch video games on Twitch. But not only did they go play Madden on Twitch in an appeal to young men, they did it during the regularly scheduled football games on Sunday. Tim Walz and the Honorable and Venerable Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez, D-Twitch, are set to play Madden NFL on Sunday. You know, when the actual football games are happening. So the only people who would be looking on Twitch for Madden on a Sunday are the people who were so off-put by the NFL but still enjoy football that they're looking for football to watch on Sunday but didn't want to see the BLM things on the field. Everybody else is watching football on Sunday. I don't know what universe you thought this was going to be an effective idea on, but you guys are... Why are you so bad at this? That's my question. Why are you so bad at this? This should not be a hard campaign to run. You're running against Donald Trump, for God's sakes. All right, I got a few here that I want to talk about with this this ballot fire that we had. From the Associated Press, fires set in drop boxes destroy hundreds of ballots in Washington and damage 3 in Oregon. From Gene Johnson and Claire Rush, and this appears to be a serial arsonist, by the way. According to the police reports, this is the same person, at least by license plate number, at all of the ballot drop box sites. From Gene Johnson and Claire Rush, incendiary devices were set off Monday in 2 ballot drop boxes, one in Portland and another in nearby Vancouver, destroying hundreds of ballots in what officials called a direct attack on democracy, about a week before a heated election day. The early morning fire at the drop box in Portland was extinguished quickly, thanks to a suppression system inside the box as well as a nearby security guard, police said, and just 3 ballots were damaged there. But within a few hours, another fire was discovered at a transit center drop box across the Columbia River in Vancouver. Vancouver is the biggest city in Washington's 3rd congressional district, the site that is expected to be one of the closest U.S. House races in the country between Democratic Rep. Marie Gluesenkamp Perez and Joe Kent. The ballot box in Vancouver had a fire suppression system inside, but that failed to prevent hundreds of ballots from burning, said Greg Kimsey, a longtime elected auditor in Clark County, Washington, which includes Vancouver. He urged voters who dropped their ballots in the transit center after 11 a.m. Saturday to contact his office for a replacement ballot. I wonder how many of them are going to wind up voting twice because of that. Or at least getting it counted twice. Which, by the way, the tinfoil in my head goes off immediately and thinks to myself, is this an excuse to go stuff a ballot box? The evil Republicans are burning the ballot, so go put your ballot in again. We promise we're only going to count one of yours if the other one was damaged, or wasn't damaged. We promise. Especially with how quickly the paid shills tried to run with the story of the fact that they knew who the guy was, had a picture of him, and called him a conservative. That seems like that was a pre-made narrative ready to come out and be spread out to the world. And when it wound up being false, they all deleted their posts. A half of me wonders if it was just some Democrat out there trying to make an excuse for people to be able to stuff the ballot. Police are searching for the person who set ballot boxes on fire in Washington, Oregon. Here's what we know from Chris Boyette. With just days until Election Day, hundreds of ballots were destroyed by fires this week at 2 drop boxes in the Pacific Northwest, and investigators are searching for the culprit they say is responsible for both. Many of the ballots, I thought it was 3, I guess it was only 2, in a drop box in Portland were unaffected, but hundreds were destroyed in a second ballot box in a fire near Vancouver. The incidences come as the Department of Homeland Security bulletin from September obtained by the watchdog group Property of the People warns some social media users are discussing and encouraging various methods of sabotaging ballot drop boxes and avoiding detection, likely heightening the potential for targeting of this election infrastructure through 2024 election cycle. I'm going to say unequivocally, on Contemporary, officially, my statement on this: do not burn the fucking ballot box, you dumb shit. I don't care if you hate the Democrat that's running in your district or the fact that they're there. Don't burn the fucking ballot box. Win the right way. Make it too big to honk honk. And I love this one. Make no mistake, an attack on a ballot box is an attack on our democracy and completely unacceptable, Secretary of State LaVon Griffin-Valade said on Monday. Whatever the motivation behind this incident, there's no justification for any attempt to disenfranchise voters. Well, that may be true, but again, if it's an opportunity to go back and get people to come back and vote again, well, honk honk. MAGA Elvis says, this is the lib that set fire to an Arizona drop box, which, by the way, the police have determined that that is not the case. They do not have the suspect in custody yet. They have a license plate number, and that's the only thing that they have at this point. Alex Jones is Civil War alert, Deep State planning to launch false flag. Which I almost wonder if that's not what this is. And like your Tristan Snells and whatnot over on X deleted this picture, which they were calling this guy a Republican. A part of me wonders, because we got the what do we know, but we don't show a license plate, I don't think. Blanked out license plate on this vehicle. Or missing license plate, I should say. Because I know Washington is a 2-plate state. So we have no identifying marks on the vehicle. Just somebody tossing this in a nondescript Audi. And going. Boy, I try not to be a conspiracy theorist on here, even as I'm dressed as Dale Gribble, but you know, some of these things you got to think real hard about. From NBC, mail-in ballots that arrive after Election Day in Mississippi shouldn't be counted, appeals court says. And of course, it's Trump appointed judges on the Fifth Circuit. From Daniel Barnes and DeRay Gregorian. A federal appeals court ruled Friday that a Mississippi law allowing mail-in ballots to be counted if they're postmarked before Election Day but received up to 5 days after Election Day is preempted by federal law. The ruling of the Fifth Circuit does not have any immediate impact on the current election because the 3-judge panel of Trump appointees declined to issue an injunction blocking the counting of the votes and sent the case back to a lower court for further action. It does, however, pave the way for a possible challenge that could go up to the Supreme Court, which could have ramifications for states that do not allow ballots postmarked before Election Day. That do allow ballots postmarked before Election Day to be counted. The appeals court ruling says that no such ballots should be counted. So they declined action, but they said that this is something that should be done. Which I'm a little bit on the fence about myself because, if you really think this is a violation and disenfranchising of voters, then issue the fucking injunction. See, I don't mind having a central government, Leon Fowle, but I think it should be weakened in it because, and I've always been to the understanding, that my belief has always been that anybody who makes laws that directly affect you should have to look you in the eye at the grocery store after they've made that law that affects you directly. And the centralized federal government should only be there to coordinate commerce and laws between these jurisdictions. Not the bloated fucking mess that we have today. Congress statutorily designated a singular day for the election of members of Congress and the appointment of presidential electors, the 3-judge panel wrote in the opinion. Text, precedent, and historical practice confirm this day for election is the day by which ballots must be both cast by voters and received by state officials. But they're not going to issue the injunction. So if something does go honk, 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 then yes, they're standing to bring the case before the Supreme Court. Which keeps me interested, for sure. That's part of the reason that I'm not going to have Ed Talk through election month. From Mark Salinger, Colorado Secretary of State announces 12 people in Mesa County, Colorado had their ballots intercepted through mail and cast without them knowing. 3 ballots made it through the signature verification process and the votes were counted. A criminal investigation is ongoing. Although I was told that this is probably a bullshit story because that never actually happens. And there's no such thing as voter fraud. From CBS News, at least a dozen mailed ballots intercepted in Mesa County before Colorado voters received them. From Jennifer McRae. I wonder what the actual number is. At least a dozen mailed ballots were intercepted and cast on the western slope before voters received them. 3 of those ballots were cast and counted in Mesa County before the county clerk was able to pull them from the final tally. I wonder who the recipients were, who they were intending to vote for, and who the vote actually went for. The ballots were filled out, the return envelopes were signed, and then returned to a USPS blue box. So that's a postal box, not a ballot drop box, said Secretary of State Jenna Griswold. In a news conference on Thursday afternoon, the issue was discovered during the signature verification process. I would have expected the people who didn't get their mail-in ballots to come back and say something, but apparently that's not a big deal. Or maybe they did and they were ignored because they were the wrong party. Griswold said 4 of the ballots made it through the initial round of signature verification, and at least 3 had received communication from the Mesa County clerk. Mesa County mailed 2 of the voters affected to ask them to cure their ballots, meaning to fix their signatures, because their signatures were rejected during the signature verification process. The voter reached out to Mesa County to tell them they did not vote their ballot or receive it. Said Griswold, at least one other affected voter received a message through the ballot track system that their ballot was received by the county clerk. Again, the voter did not receive their ballot and had not voted their ballot. Griswold said Mesa County Clerk Bobby Gross began an investigation and discovered that the ballots in question had been sent in close proximity to each other. During the investigation, they discovered that some of the ballots had been signed by the same person. The clerk turned over the investigation to the 21st Judicial District Attorney, who initiated a criminal investigation. What do you want to bet that 9 times out of 10 nothing comes out of this? What do we have here? NDAA for 2013. I will look into that after the stream. But it's interesting again because I'm told that none of that ever happens. And the last thing for a nice October surprise that got completely swallowed up by the news cycle before we move into the close of the show. And then I go and make some dinner because I'm really hungry right now. Israel strikes on Iran broke a 40-year taboo. Tehran faces tough choices about what to do next. Because of course it was a taboo for somebody to strike back. And I'm not Team Israel, Team Iran, Team Palestine, or anything on this. I want us here to stay out of the conflict entirely. But I know that's never going to happen. From Mustafa Salem. Iran has rushed to downplay the impact of Israel strikes on its territory this weekend, suggesting that it has taken an off-ramp to avoid a wider war. Okay, when the IRGC is the calm head in this situation over our greatest ally, there is something seriously wrong with this world. But the attack set a precedent that the Islamic Republic has tried to avoid since its inception 40 years ago. The adversaries spent decades avoiding a direct confrontation, instead choosing to engage punches. In a shadow war, Israel used clandestine operations to assassinate key Iranian figures. Boy, if Midget B heard that one. And execute cyber attacks on vital facilities as Iran continued activating its Arab proxy militias to attack the Jewish state. Saturday's attack marked the first time Israel has acknowledged striking Iran, bringing the shadow war into the open, crossing a threshold that has led some in the Islamic Republic to question the country's deterrence capabilities. In April, after Iran attacked Israel in retaliation for what it said was an Israeli attack on its diplomatic building in the Syrian capital Damascus, U.S. officials said Israel responded by attacking Iran just days later. Israel didn't publicly acknowledge the attack. The latest attack, however, was different. Israel openly said it conducted precise strikes on military targets in Iran. Israel now has broader aerial freedoms of operation in Iran. Israel's military spokesman Daniel Hagari said, touting achievements in the attack. What treaties or signed agreements do we have with Israel? I don't know how deep into that I can go on YouTube. I get where you're going with that. I don't know if I can do that on YouTube. Shortly after the assault, Iran state media published images showing everyday life continuing as usual in its cities. Schools continued operating in Tehran. Streets were shown gridlocked with traffic. Hardline commentators mocked the attack on television, and social media memes poked fun at the limited nature of the Israeli response. So, for right now, it looks like cooler heads have prevailed. I'm a little curious to see where this goes. I know that there's going to be problems with this as we go into election season, given the nature of the way our government operates. But for right now, it is time to close out the show and let the election happen, which we will see you next week for an extended edition of Contemporary, where we talk about what's happening on election night and what we do with the information we have. Alright, let's do the rules of acquisition, and we'll do a couple things that I like and a couple things that I hate, and head out of here for the night. So, we are going down. We did the 21st, 22nd rules of acquisition. We're on the 23rd rule of acquisition. Nothing is more important than your health, except for your money. And this is from the Enterprise episode, which retconned the first contact of the Ferengi, putting it 80 years before what we saw on The Next Generation, which was supposed to be the first contact. Although, if we go look at DS9, that puts the first contact between human and Ferengi in the 40s during Roswell. So that's been retconned and moved around a bunch of times. Nothing is more important than your health except for your money was another one of those. It was a late Jerry Taylor era Star Trek episode. Before Kurtzman Trek. Making more fun of the idea of capitalism than actually doing things that are kind of capitalistic in base. Like, a lot of these rules we can actually use in real life. But this one was just them going out and making fun of people who value money. Now, of course, you should be able to continue to gain profit in order to make sure that you can continue to live healthily as we go. Because healthcare costs money. But do make sure that you take care of your health as well. Yes, this is every Tuesday at 6. Except these last couple weeks when I've been a little bit late starting off. More people should know about it. You make a lot of fame if you were the first one to roll that into a 5-minute joint. The congressional law, yeah, I would make that into a joint in a hurry. Alright, let's do some things I like and some things that I hate. Things that I like. I was listening a little bit on some various different avenues that I listened to. I remember this actually was circling around, and I heard the original version again. Not the other day on satellite radio. Palm has satellite radio in her car, and we were listening to 90s music. And it reminded me, earlier this year, there was a circulation of a video from an Unplugged concert in 2016 of Hanson making a reunion tour. Now, I was one of the people in the 90s who just basically hated on Hanson for the fact that they were the next boy band teeny bopper group. When they did the acoustic performance of the song Bop, which has the nonsense lyrics for the chorus, I realized at a time that the original lyrics for the song actually hit a little bit hard. And just everybody only heard the chorus and thought it was just a nonsense song of a bunch of boys that look like girls playing music. So I'd like to share the acoustic version of the song, and they did slur the words a little bit on this, so I'm going to read the lyrics afterwards, just to remind you that, hey, even pop stars with music written for them for other words can sometimes have a little bit of meaning. So let's have a listen to 2016's acoustic version. And then it goes into the nonsense lyrics, but because, again, they were slurring very much in these ones, going through them very quickly to a point that it sounds like the typical nonsense that comes out of the chorus of this song. If you'll allow me. You have so many relationships in this life, only one or two will last. You go through all the pain and strife, and then you turn your back and they're gone so fast. So hold on to the ones who really care. In the end, they'll be the ones there. When you get old, start losing your hair, can you tell me who will still care? And it's a little bit of a shame to me that had to be masked over a throwaway chorus the way that it was. Because that carries some meaning, especially going into my 5th decade. Let's do some other things that I like. I didn't put this with the Madison Square Garden news because, well, I wanted to talk about this as something that I like. Because while I do still think that New York is going to go for Harris because of the Bronx and Brooklyn, I think it's going to be, like I said at the time, closer than a lot of pundits and a lot of political nerds want to believe. I think it's going to be closer than a lot of Democrats are comfortable with. And I think it is entering swing state territory. From the Daily Wire, Ramaswamy thrills Madison Square Garden rally crowd with a bold claim, New York is a swing state. We will go right to the video on this one because we are up on the clock. We're at 2.5 hours already. I'm going to be so glad when this election is over and Contemporary goes back to being 2 hours again. But let us listen to Mr. Ramaswamy.
Tell you something, I don't follow the polls. I don't follow the pundits. But I follow the energy. And this does not feel like second place energy in here tonight. I had a friend of mine, smart guy, he's a billionaire, texted me this morning. And he said, why the hell are you guys wasting your time in New York City instead of going to a swing state? You want to know what I told him? I said, welcome to 2024. New York is a swing state. I got a message for Kamala Harris tonight. We're feeling the joy in New York City tonight, aren't we? And the only celebration bigger than this one right now is going to be on the evening of November 5th when we send Donald J. Trump back to the White House as your 47th president and commander-in-chief.
Like I said, statistically, 538's poll shows Trump trailing Harris at 14.5 points. It's about half the margin in which Biden led Trump around this time in 2020 in New York. I think it's closer than that. If we look at what's happened with upstate and with some of the people in New York, seeing what's happening with Mayor Eric Adams and a lot of people who voted for Adams, I still think this is going to go Harris. But I think it's going to be... I don't think it's going to be within 5, but I think it's going to be within 10. If I had to put a guess right now, bookmark this live stream. Well, don't bookmark the live stream because the live stream is going to be set to private after this. But bookmark this re-recording if you're hearing this right now, if you're listening to this on Spotify, for a week. I think it's going to be 6. I think 6 is the magic number for New York. And that is swing state territory to me. So, we will see. Now this one I'm going to put on here. I like it because they got caught. The community notes wins again and doesn't let him get away with bullshit. From the New York Post, lefty influencer duped by fake image of Harris in McDonald's uniform now taunts Trump over altered shots. Well, of course he's got to stay with the taunting because he gets paid to do that. a left-leaning influencer who fell for and shared a phony image of Harris in a McDonald's uniform, is now calling out Trump and his supporters for sharing altered images of the former president. Influencer Billy Nelson took to X to call out fragile MAGA supporters for continuing to share photoshopped images of Trump after she shared and deleted a doctored image of Harris donning the McDonald's uniform and wrote "McFuck you, Donald Trump," because of course, you know, Trump worked at McDonald's and he claimed that Harris didn't, and there she is in her uniform. I said something was false. I apologized, took it down. The motherfucker couldn't tell the truth if he fucking tried, Nelson said. In a clip showing a photoshopped image Trump shared depicting himself as a football player for the Steelers. Oh my God. Liberals on social media are sharing a viral faked image of Harris in a McDonald's uniform to bolster the unsubstantiated claim she worked at one in Alameda, California. The post-millennialist journalist Andy Ngo wrote on X. Social media users had superimposed Harris on the face of a Canadian woman named Suzanne Bernier, who died from cancer in 2007, according to Ngo and an archival website. Former West Virginia state delegate Derek Evans shared the image of Harris alongside the original picture, writing, "Not only did they fake the photo, they had to put her on a white girl on top of it." Good show. And the last one that we do on things that I like before I move over to things that I hate. I'm not going to do the article. I want to read the X. And then the reason I put this on things that I like instead of things that I hate, because the fact that the lefties are doing this, saying J.D. Vance plays Magic the Gathering. His favorite card reveals Dark Ambitions, which, by the way, is a banned card currently. So he's been playing Magic the Gathering for years. But if he is now, he can't use this card that is his favorite because it was banned from general play. But the reason I put this on things that I like was the memes. And I know most of them are coming from people trying to get ahead of the left-wingers because, well, they're funny. And the left can't meme. So, some of the cards that came out of this. Missed Opportunity, JD. Invoked Prejudice, which is a blue card. If opponent casts summon a spell that does not match the color of one of the creatures under your control, the spell is countered unless the caster pays an additional X, where X is the casting cost of the summoned spell. You know, because color is everything. And that's where they all came from, too. Some of these were solid, though. Nurkish, Crusade. All white creatures gain +1/+1. Mass Calcify, which is Chud Acceleration Enjoyer. And I know that's a right-winger because they adopted that term. Destroy all non-white creatures. There's another good one in here. No, we saw that one already. Oh, yes, Cleanse. That was the other one. Destroy all black creatures. So, a lot of people had fun with that one. I enjoyed it. Because it's cards, yes, I can. So, that's what we have for that one. Let's look at some things that I hate. Reddit, being Reddit, of course, r/Texas bans a Redditor for asking what policies of Harris do you support. The original poster was, I mean, come on, Harris has Beyonce and Willie Nelson, Trump has Kid Rock, let's vote, get that woman into the White House. User Bubble Leafs says, which of her policies do you support? The mod at r/Texas says, Your content has been deemed a violation of Rule 7. As a reminder, Rule 7 states, politics are fine, but state your case, explain why you hold the positions that you do, which is, by the way, what the person being banned was asking the other person to do, and debate with civility. Posts and comments that meant solely to troll or enrage people, and those that are little more than campaign ads or slogans, do nothing to contribute to a healthy debate, and will therefore be removed. Petitions will be also removed. AMAs by political figures are exempt from this rule. Ask me anythings. You have been muted from our Texas. You've been temporarily muted from our Texas. Bubble Leafs is permanently banned from our Texas. So Bubble Leafs got banned for asking which of Harris's policies the original poster supported. Let's see. Let's do a couple more here. Tim Pool announces he will broadcast live from the Daily Wire studios during election week, which is probably why he's starting to get ready to break up his company. Because he's going to get that sweet, sweet Ben Shapiro money. Yes, that is red shit. From Amanda Harding. I don't like Tim Pool. I don't believe that he is as grassroots as he claims to be. I think that he got a bunch of money from Vice and continued to get a bunch of money from Disney to pretend to be this character and try to shape the influence of conservative influencers. I don't think he's legitimate. I congratulate him, by the way, over the fact that he's having a kid now, because that's an exciting thing, but I don't believe his political stances are his. Tim Pool announced he'll be joining the Daily Wire for the big night of election coverage next Tuesday, which you shouldn't go and watch the Daily Wire's election coverage. You should be right here, because we're doing that right here after Contemporary. He told listeners on Mondays, "Ladies and gentlemen, next week for the election, what are we going to do? We're going to be in Nashville at the Daily Wire studios. We're going to have our own studio set up where on election night we'll have both shows next to each other, and we're basically going to jump back and forth." Timcast IRL will be live all night, Pool added. Daily Wire is planning to do the same thing, and then we're going to, at some point, get up, and I'm going to go over there, and we're going to come over here, and it's going to be a huge party. So it's actually really amazing. Our crew and their crew, and many others that were invited to this big election night party will be involved in this massive show. So, yeah, he's going to be joining the Daily Wire. I don't know if it's because he found a new revenue stream since Vice went under, or it's Daily Wire is being influenced by Vice. I don't know what it is. And, well, apparently we have attempt number 5, which, big fucking shocker there. You spent the last 9 years saying this person is Hitler, and if he comes to power, then you're all going to be chained to the stove, and freedom will be over, and he'll take your guns, and he'll do the fascist takeover, and end of freedom of speech, and round up all of the enemies, and all the other bullshit. Democrat man who uses she/her pronouns arrested for allegedly threatening to kill Trump. From Katie Jerkovich. A male Pennsylvania Democrat who uses she/her pronouns, so I'm guessing a pre-op trans, was arrested after allegedly said that he would like to shoot the former president ahead of a rally in Pennsylvania State University. The 74-year-old resident, Paul J. Gavinonis, was reportedly overheard saying he'd like to shoot Trump while he was purchasing a parking pass at the University Transportation Office ahead of Trump's rally on Saturday at the college, the Lexington Herald leader reported. The staff member of the transportation office became alarmed by the comments and called the police. According to the university police, the registered Democrat described how he planned to climb up on the top of one of the buildings and said, You can't take a gun in or the students will see it, the outlet noted. He was also quoted saying, "I hate Donald Trump. I'd like to shoot that guy." What is going on with the treatments that so many of these people go back and either attempt to do a shooting or actually do pull off a mass shooting? Because, like, except for the Uvalde one, which a lot of people tried to push that as a transsexual shooter, all the mass shootings, the school shootings, other than that one in the Biden term, were all transsexual people. I don't know why. And it kind of makes me curious as to what's that. And I know they're using antidepressants and mind-altering drugs at the time, mixing up massive doses of hormones. I know that that's a thing. But yeah, the Uvalde one, I know they passed that picture around of the transsexual person who looked kind of similar to the shooter, but it wound up being a separate person. That one got community noted. But all the rest of them wound up being that way. There weren't any big right-wing mass shooters during the Biden term. But yes, that makes 5. That makes 5 in 2 months. Alright. On that note, now that I'm completely black-pilled again, I'm hungry. So I think it's time to head out of here for the night. Should I do the costume for video game streams? Because I'm playing BioShock tomorrow night. And I'm just starting that. And it's blind. I remember to put blind in my description on Twitch. Because otherwise everyone's going to want to come in and backseat that one. And I've never looked into strategy guides for BioShock. I know a little bit about what the story is, because I got curious about that. And I got this, and it was offered for free on Epic like 4 years ago, and I've never touched it. I've got 3 of BioShock games that were for free for that same sale. And this is going to be my first time. I'm kind of excited, but I don't want any spoilers or anything. I just kind of want to see what happens, and I know that's hard for a... What is that, like a 20-something-year-old game at this point? Yeah, Dale's Dead Bug. I need to go to work in a GMC cargo van with a giant ant on top. Anyway, let's head out of here for the night. Where's my outro music? While I'm looking for my outro music, I can probably get the end card set up. Did I have to do a restart? Is that why I can't find it? I did have to do a restart. That's why I can't find it. Alright, well, thank you everybody who came by and hung out with me for Halloween. I hope that you guys get all the candy that you want and enjoy it deeply. I know if you have any Reese's Peanut Butter Cups that you don't want, you can send them right over here and I will take those right off your hands for you. But for the news, we will see you here next week for our regular scheduled contemporary, where we look at the very last minute craziness of the election, and then I'm going to take a brief break, I'm going to get something to eat, and we're going to go watch election results roll in for the rest of the night. And we're going to have to do it late because, well, they actually might call it while we're on contemporary, depending on how big the quote landslide is. But again, I don't know what's going to happen next week, Tuesday. This is the most anomalous and weird election cycle I've ever seen in my life. I didn't want to sit down here and watch this just for the fucking entertainment value. And I'm going to be dead serious about that. Because I can't even put a finger on the pulse of it at this point. But with that, we're out of here. Take care. Have a good night. Hank, why is Nancy leaving here with John Redcorn? Thanks for watching, everybody. We will see you next time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.